Thank you everyone for joining. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. Um, so thank you for joining us through webinar today. So the event is being hosted at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and the University of Minnesota Twin City campus resides on Dakota land ceded in the treaties of 1837 and 1851. I acknowledge that this place has a complex and layered history, and this land acknowledgement is one of the ways in which we work to educate the campus and community about this land and our relationships with it and with each other. I'm committed to ongoing efforts to recognize, support, and advocate for American Indian nations and peoples.
So even though participants in this webinar are joining from different parts of the world and various time zones, I also want to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and I consider it my responsibility to support ongoing efforts of decolonization here and elsewhere. Palita, I think you're muted.
There we go. So thank you everyone for joining this series once again. So starting in 2021, this series, Theory, Praxis, Politics, brought together perspective of academics, filmmakers, programmers, archivists, civil servants, and other stakeholders with an interest in the question of filmmaking, practices of art and moving images of Asia and its diaspora. In 2021 to 2023, we have already organized 4 roundtable through this webinar Zoom virtual meeting. And the first one was on censorship across Asia, the second one on the politics of filmmaking, and third one we focus on the edited volume, The Anthropocene in Southeast Asian Film and Artist Moving Images. Last year, the 4th session, we reflected on migratory labors of Southeast Asian cinema during and post COVID-19. And this goes to show that we consider Asia as a productive site in which theory, practice, and politics overlap. And the intersection allows us to reconsider the relationship between theory, aesthetics, politics, as well as practices in many forms, a claim which will be underpinned by our session today. And for this event, I, Palita Chunsaengchan, Assistant Professor of Southeast Asian Cinema at the Department of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, University of Minnesota, and my co-host, Elizabeth Wijaya, Assistant Professor of East Asian Cinema at the Department of Visual Studies and the Director of the Southeast Asian Seminar Series at the Asian Institute Monk School, University of Toronto. I'm very pleased to present a roundtable discussion focusing on archival labor, which can mean the complex relationship between restoration, preservation, programming, public engagement that helps to formulate, revive, and sustain Southeast Asian cinema. Before we introduce our speakers, I would like to acknowledge that this activity is sponsored by an Imagine Fund Special Events Grant, an initiative of the University of Minnesota Executive Vice President and Provost, established through a generous gift from the McKnight Foundation and facilitated by the Institute of Advanced Studies. And I'm passing the baton to my co-host, Elizabeth.
I was muted. So thank you very much to everyone joining us from your different time zones. So I wanted to remind that all attendees at any point in time, you can input your questions into the Q&A tab. So I think Abba has a slide that shows, yeah, so use the built-in Q&A feature to send your questions at any time, and we'll have time for Q&A. So in terms of the structure of this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure, then I'll introduce the first speaker. So for this session, Palita and I, we came up with a few questions that we sent to all the speakers, and we invited them to respond to maybe some of them. So it was not necessary for anyone to respond to all of them. So the questions that we raised were, could you describe your involvement in archival labor? What are your thoughts on or how much of your work involves restoration, preservation, programming, and public engagement? How does the question of the nation figure in your work? Does the archive that you work with involve any mandates or collaborations beyond the country in which the physical archive is based? And finally, what are some of the constraints facing your work or the organizations that you are researching on or collaborating with? So the first speaker of the day is Bliss Lim, who is my colleague and professor of cinema studies at the University of Toronto. So her first book, Translating Time, Cinema, the Fantastic and Temporal Critique, was published by Duke University Press in 2009. And her new book, The Archival Afterlives of Philippine Cinema, was published in 2024 by Duke University Press, that analyzes the crisis-ridden history of film archiving in the Philippines. So apart from that, she's also on editorial boards and other advisory boards. You can see the fuller bio on our event website. So over to you, please.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Is that fine? Thank you, Liz and Palita, for organizing this event. And thanks to everyone who's joining us on Zoom, whatever time zone you're in. I'm excited to be on this roundtable with such amazing co-panelists. I'm going to share my slides now, and maybe you guys can let me know if it's appearing. Is that fine?
That looks fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm just gonna, okay, all right. So I'd like to speak briefly about archival labor in relation to two key concepts in my work, archival power and making do. I am not myself a trained audiovisual archivist, but the labor of archivists is central to my recent book, The Archival Afterlives of Philippine Cinema. As I recount, the history of film archiving in the Philippines is crisis-ridden, a history of lost films, collapsed archives, and limited access to surviving films. Established during the Marcos dictatorship in 1981, the first film archives of the Philippines collapsed after their ouster in 1986. For the next 25 years, there was no national archive for cinema, and countless films were lost. In 2011, the National Archives of the Philippines, National Film Archives of the Philippines, later rebranded the Philippine Film Archive, was reestablished, but it remains on uncertain ground because it has neither a firm legislative mandate nor a permanent institutional space. Given the instability of government audiovisual archives, most surviving titles are privately archived by a media conglomerate, ABS-CBN, which has completed far more film restorations than the government. But in 2020, under the regime of Rodrigo Duterte, the ABS-CBN archive was shut down together with its parent conglomerate by the Duterte-controlled Congress. Restoration slowed to a trickle, and today only a skeletal archive staff at ABS-CBN remains. As a result, very little of Philippine film history survives. Only 5 full-length feature films made before World War II remain, all movies made in Manila using the official national language, Tagalog-based Filipino. Of the silent era, nothing remains. The situation is even bleaker for regional films made outside Manila. The earliest surviving Cebuano film dates from only 1969. I call this an archival condition because it is the opposite of the conventional fantasy that archives last forever. Limited access, the scarcity of works, and the instability of collections are anarchival in the sense of running contrary to fantasies of easy access and media being preserved forever. But in writing the book, I didn't want to just mourn this history of lost films, nor did I want to say, look how audiovisual archives in the Philippines are so much worse off than better funded archives in the global north. Instead of mourning this history, I wanted to recognize the labor of archivists, their ingenuity and resourcefulness. While most people think that archives are places and institutions, I've come to realize that archives are people. The best finding aid to any collection is not a database or a catalog, but a person. So when an archive collapses, it's the people who worked there, their memories and personal papers, that are the last trace of lost institutional histories. 2 related concepts in my book that refer to the labor of archivists are archival power and making do. I write about archival power as a form of subjective capacity wielded not only by professional archivists, but various players also in the archive world. So I'm drawing here on post-colonial historian Michel Rouve-Trouillot's notion of subjective capacity. Trouillot gives the example of a labor strike, which cannot be described as a historical event without considering the subjective capacities of those involved. To write a history of a strike means to recognize, quote, the workers as purposeful subjects aware of their own voices. A strike is a strike only if workers think they are striking. Their subjectivity is an integral part of the event, end quote. Film studies usually takes the labor of archivists for granted, and similarly, archivist perspectives have been disregarded in the Philippine government's cultural policy decisions. Women archivists, from female middle managers at state and corporate archives to video clerks, have been especially key to my research. Audiovisual archivists are a relatively tiny class of memory professionals. Globally, their number barely reaches 5 figures, but these undervalued cultural workers wield a great deal of power over the Philippines' imperiled collective memory. In my book, then, archival labor refers to resourceful social actors exercising archival power in low to no budget circumstances. In particular, I center archivists and activists' resourceful practices of making do and their perseverance in the face of limited funding and government indifference. Making do is my translation for an idiomatic phrase in Filipino, gawan ng paraan, which means to find a way or forge a path despite known obstacles. Making do is a crucial expression of archival power. To give a few examples, one collapsed film archive I discuss is the Philippine Information Agency's Motion Picture Division, or PIA-MPD, which was shut down by a misguided bureaucrat in 2004. Its one-of-a-kind film collection included Marcos-era government productions not archived elsewhere, and the precious remains of the first defunct film archive of the Philippines. On my first research visit to the PIA Film Vault in September 2014, a decade after the shutdown, I encountered an extensive but derelict collection. The film vaults were not even air-conditioned. The air smelled of vinegar, and several film cans dripped a black ooze. My research request to screen and digitize propaganda films made on the eve of the declaration of martial law would have gone nowhere if not for the collaborative efforts of mostly women archivists. Vicky Bellarmino of the Cultural Center of the Philippines and Bel Capulan Vicky Bejarano of the Philippine Information Agency. The film inspection and technical equipment check were conducted by Alfred Nemenzo of the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Like other Filipinas of my generation, the so-called martial law babies, my childhood took place entirely under the shadow of the Marcos dictatorship. In college, I heard about an earlier generation of activists who were arrested, tortured, or killed during the first quarter storm, a wave of anti-Marcos student protests in January 1970. Today, moving images of the first quarter storm are scant. I had never seen footage of that chaotic era prior to the small private screening these archivists organized in a cramped office at the PIA in September 2014. In decaying 16mm propaganda films like From a Season of Strife, which you see here, I witnessed the enormous student-led mass movement that rose up in resistance to state power, practically announcing their own counter-reading from within the frame of dictatorship propaganda. This filmic record of the sheer size and intensity of these student protests affected me deeply. In September 2015, these propaganda films were digitized collaboratively at the Cultural Center of the Philippines, or CCP. Although kinescoping usually refers to the recording of a TV program on motion picture film directly through a lens focused on the screen of a video monitor, the technician Rodel Valiente is not capturing a screen, but an image projected on an office wall. Since the wall had not been cleaned prior to the digitization, the dust on the CCP's wall is now an imperfection that is part and parcel of this propaganda film's archival afterlife as a digital file. As it turns out, similar forms of makeshift digitization have a long history in the Philippine archive world. Rather than deploring the rushed poor copies that result from low to no budget efforts, I champion the archival labor of those who embrace access, however imperfect, because these films were in danger of disappearing completely. There are parallels to this concept of making do in Latin America, South and Southeast Asia, and Africa, which tells me that these kinds of creative improvisation are an enduring dimension of media cultures in the global South. So rather than mourning, my book centers a kind of Sisyphean hope, even under desperate conditions. I myself am part of a decentralized advocacy for archives, a decades-old collective form of archival labor that hopes to ensure the sustainability of Philippine audiovisual archives. My final example of archival labor doesn't concern film archives. Instead, I want to call attention to the labor of archivists who are trying to safeguard collections of radical underground papers as a crucial repository of national memory. So this is new work outside of my book. Today, the best-known archive of what Resil Mojares calls rebel papers is the Philippine Radical Papers, housed at the main library of the University of the Philippines, or UP Diliman. Described as the unofficial archives of the political underground, the collection evolved covertly through anonymously deposited materials or librarians collecting handouts at protest marches. To safeguard this fugitive collection after the declaration of martial law in 1972 and the anti-subversion laws of 1976 and 1981, 51 boxes of deliberately unindexed and unlabeled materials were concealed at the UP Library's rare book section for over 30 years. Collections of radical papers are especially important to understanding the dictatorship because the so-called legitimate press was either muzzled or co-opted by the authoritarian state. So radical archives capture missing voices, absent from above-ground memory institutions. Collections of rebel papers in northern Luzon and the Visayas that survived the Marcos era's anti-subversion laws faced a new era of library purges in 2021. Ahead of the 50th anniversary of martial law, documents pertaining to the National Democratic Front, or NDF, including records of peace negotiations, were confiscated during military raids by the Regional Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or RTF-LTAC, at 3 university libraries: Kalinga State University, Isabela State University, and Aklan State University. These library purges stemmed from Duterte's 2018 Executive Order Number 70, which promulgated a whole-of-nation approach to ending the communist insurgency. In the face of a renewed era of military-backed censorship and red tagging, UP librarians vowed not to yield a page of the radical papers. Attempts to block out oppositional historical memory are recognized tactics of the global authoritarian playbook. In 2022, within his first 100 days in office, Bongbong Marcos, the new president and son of the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, oversaw the wholesale defunding of cultural and historical state agencies. The 2023 allocations for the National Historical Commission, National Archives, and National Library were slashed by between 23 to 27%, while the National Commission for Arts and Culture, which spearheaded so many restorations of film in the past, faced the steepest cutbacks at almost 84%. While Bongbong starved cultural and historical preservation agencies of operating funds, their combined budgets amounted to 564 million pesos. He apportioned a massive 10 billion in funds for the controversial task force that had implemented library raids the year before. The hinge between practices of domination and attempts to ensure collective forgetting could not be any clearer, and the archivists who resist these attempts are engaged in crucial and very risky forms of archival labor. Thank you. I'm going to stop the share now.
Thank you so much to Bliss.
Thank
We
you.
have so much to discuss, but I want to invite the next speaker, who is Chiu T. Pao, who has been with the Asian Film Archive since 2009. As senior archivist, he plans AFA's preservation strategies, oversees the development of film collections, and curates various film programs to showcase these collections. He also selects and oversees AFA's film restorations and has delivered presentations on AFA's advocacy efforts and the issue of film preservation. So the longer bio is on our event website. So over to you, Tipa.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you hear me fine, right? Is it showing in full?
It does. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tipa.
thank you. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Elizabeth and Palita, for the invitation to join this panel. It's really nice to see everyone. I'm representing the Asian Film Archive based in Singapore. And I mean, with regards to the topic today, I wanted to share a little bit about the work that we do at the Asian Film Archive in relation to archival labor. So we're really relatively small and young archive. We turn 20 next year. We currently house a collection of just over 3,000 titles, which includes both classic and contemporary films, many of which, some of which you see on the screen right now, are also sole surviving copies in the film format. So the Asian Film Archive was founded in 2005 as an independent effort, starting with only one person and gradually growing into a team of 11 full-time staff members today. So since 2014, the AFA has been a subsidiary of the National Library Board of Singapore. What distinguishes the Asian Film Archive is our transnational approach in collecting films, and guided by an acquisition and selection policy that is periodically reviewed and publicly available on our website. So the mission of the AFA is to preserve Asia's film heritage, particularly films that are at risk of being lost forever, often due to a lack of preservation infrastructure in the countries of origin. So this is especially a challenge that archives across the region face. Balancing, deciding what we can save with when resources are stretched, and also when filmmakers themselves actually may not even have access to their own materials. So the AFA also provides access to our collection through the Lee Kong Chian Reference Library that is housed at the National Library of Singapore, and also through our public programs. So since 2014, we've been really fortunate to have the resources to digitize and restore films from our collection, and also to explore interesting regional restoration and as well as preservation projects. So film restoration itself is a really labor-intensive and a really expensive process that requires not just specialized expertise, but also decision-making by the archive around prioritizing what can and should be saved. So over the years, we've restored so far 37 titles, but with each and every project also comes the question of sustainability, both in terms of the resources and the long-term accessibility of these films. So some of these films that we restored have been screened at film festivals, museums, other archives, as well as public venues, and eventually also becoming available for public reference. So, and of course, most importantly, these restorations have also allowed the archive to continue preserving these works, in both new analog and digital formats. So since 2019, the AFA also held regular programs at the Oldham Theatre, which is a cinema located within the National Archives of Singapore. So our public programming includes thematic film screenings and retrospectives. We showcase a range of films, including those from our collection, and also some sourced from external archives, filmmakers, and also other cultural institutions. And these programs are specifically designed to, of course, spark conversations around cinema and also the cultural relevance, inviting audiences to engage more deeply with both the historical and contemporary works that we show. So, and quite importantly, the collaboration between AFA and other archives, as well as cultural institutions, is especially vital, as it really enables us to share the resources, the exchange of expertise and knowledge, and together tackle and address challenges of access and visibility. So the Asian Film Archive has also explored cross-disciplinary collaborations, ranging from silent film screenings accompanied by contemporary musicians to commissioning new works and art installations by visual artists. So these artists are often encouraged to draw inspiration from the archival materials in their creations and to repurpose the collection beyond just traditional research. Additionally, we also actively partner with the National Library and also community agencies to create programs that address the various facets of our local population and using films to highlight societal issues and as well as our shared heritage. So education is also a really significant component in our outreach efforts. We conduct programs within the classrooms to promote film literacy and also introduce the concept of film preservation to students who are currently in film schools. And at the same time, it is also our aim to actually create some opportunities for young people to engage with our work through internships as well as volunteer with the AFA. We've also published videos and book publications to facilitate greater access to films and content that were generated from exhibitions and research, and they can, of course, be found through our online shop. So in addition to engaging with the wider local community, the AFA is also an institutional member of 3 major associations, archive associations since 2007, which is the Southeast Asia Pacific Audiovisual Archive Association, FIAF, which is the International Federation of Film Archives, and the Association of Moving Image Archivists. So through these various networks and various sort of conferences and sort of network events that we've, participated with, managed to build really valuable relationships and collaborations with these other film archives and institutions, which actually led to support for our collections as well as restoration projects through the sharing of knowledge and resources. And we are also, actively engaging with the academic and research interest groups. So with people like Bliss, who we work with, both locally and internationally. And the main goal is really to encourage and facilitate research using AFA's materials as well as collection. So as I was putting this together, I really the concept of archival label really encompasses more, for an archive, at least for me. It encompasses far more than just storing films and just providing access to them. It really involves a complex web of programming, outreach, as well as education, and all of which of course requires of careful planning and resource management. So one of our ongoing challenges is, of course, the advocating for the importance of film preservation to the broader audience, especially in the time today where media is often consumed without much thought, to its long-term survival. So engaging stakeholders is, of course, an ongoing process that requires dialogue and action. So an example is a Save Our Film campaign, which the AFA launched in 2010 and revitalized in 2016. And through this campaign, we convey the yearly message of the challenges of film preservation and its vital importance to our film heritage, especially to the film communities around our region. So with that, I actually want to bring it back to the core of what I do, in terms of preservation work, which is really fundamental to the archive. And as I reflect some of my earliest experiences, I remember this particular moment about 15 years ago, where a colleague of mine filmed me actually unpacking and inspecting a bag containing this reel of film that we had deemed unsalvageable. So I recall this moment actually very vividly because it was actually one of my earliest experience handling a film like that, and there was a sense of profound devastation as you can see now. The film is wet and it literally crumbled as I try to hold it, just to hold it in my hands. And thinking about archival label, this experience really, I feel, marked the foundation of what it entails, but particularly at that point in time. And I think these are incidents that actually make the archivist, it affects the archivist in an emotional way. And I would say this is sort of the emotional weight or labor of preservation in that sense. So at that time, of course, our greatest concerns regarding film preservation is temperature and humidity, as well as how much space can we allocate for the films that we select for preservation. So the climate, of course, in Southeast Asia is really causes film to deteriorate at an alarming rate, and often by the time these materials arrive to us, it's already too late, like as you can see, for us to take any effective action. And over the years, I've also documented some of the films and the worst conditions, highlighting these kind of significant challenges that we face, where the image is completely lost. And then, we also face, over the years, we also face the obsolescence of video formats. Of course, we should present a different set of hurdles, when it comes to preserving them. So there's also now the consensus of, among audiovisual archives that internationally, the large-scale digitization of such magnetic media may not be feasible next year. So today we actually continue to grapple with challenges, of preserving analog materials and the question that I mentioned, whether we'll run out of space or how do we deal with formats that are becoming obsolete. And it was really around, like, say, just less than a decade ago, like maybe 7, 8 years ago, we actually began navigating this changing work environment for us, when an influx of hard drives and digital storage media begin to flood our desk. So this image, of course, it's just a stack of hard drives, portable hard drives that were handed over to us for keeping. And this image shows the repository, that houses, of course, the film reels. And I've placed a picture of a roll of LTO, which is the magnetic tape media technology, short for the linear tape open, which is a data tape technology that archives currently use, to preserve born digital content. And the other image on the right side, the two images on the right side, illustrates a digital repository in the server room. So as we accumulate more data, we would then require more and more of such racks, and as well as LTO drives. So this is a complete sort of infrastructure that is really different and presented a different kind of challenge, that we're used to for analog preservation. So while it may seem archives may have it easier because everything is digital, it's really far from the truth. And we know that digital formats are designed in ways that make their lifespan really unpredictable. Implementing digital preservation requires, in fact, implementing digital preservation now requires archivists to actually possess the knowledge of IT, information technology and beyond. And film archives must now also explore new digital tools, to ensure collections are accessible and to be able to track millions of digital files. So some archives have also begun adopting, artificial intelligence to start assisting in the cataloging as well as annotation of content. So to put it simply, if I were to preserve a movie, a film in both the analog format, such as a 35mm film or a videotape, versus a born digital file, the cost that's associated with preserving the digital version of the film is often estimated to be several times more expensive than if I were to just keep the physical analog item. So this increased expense, of course, reflects the ongoing investment required by the archive to manage digital content, including the regular migration to contemporary formats every 4 to 5 years, specialized man hours, inflation, and the sort of growing number of digital films produced each year. And there've been a lot of writings. If you just do a easy search, that in fact we're losing more digital films ever, that we've lost, like, our older films that were on analog formats. So I guess, as archives like the Asian Film Archive continue to face these sort of dual demands of preserving both analog and digital, so the issue of sustainability really becomes a critical consideration, and we would then need to consider and seek innovative solutions, not only in terms of adapting adopting new technologies in terms of managing resources, but also ensuring, how do we manage some of these resources responsibly to ensure that our preservation efforts are economically and environmentally sustainable.
Thank you so much to T-Pao. And next, I want to introduce Maung Okkar, who began his film career at the age of 15 and is a philosophy graduate, a film director, and a film archive researcher. He founded Save Myanmar Film Organization that has been working on preserving audiovisual heritage, such as films, non-film, or film-related materials. I think you're muted.
Yeah, do you see my screen?
Yeah, we do. Thank you, Okkar.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar, and I'm very glad to be part of this roundtable talk together with the other experts from the film archival industry. So my name is Okkar, and I'm a film archivist, and I'm also a filmmaker. So I work as a project director for the Save Myanmar Film, a nonprofit organization focusing on film archiving, and we are like the very first independent organization working on conserving cinema heritage in Myanmar. We put our urgent focus on surviving films like black and white and color and other non-film materials since 2017. We can say that our film archiving journey began in 2017 with other filmmaker friends and film archivists, and we have been working on film archiving, film and film-related material conservation and restoration works. So I myself was raised in a film family where my father and grandfather are filmmakers. So imagine that there are many film reels were being kept in my house. So I try to look up. I try to look for ways to restore them properly, and I became a film archivist, and I started this Save Myanmar Film project with my friends. So I think my journey was started by a personal interest. So since 2017, So since 2017, our ultimate focus has been put on the surviving black and white films and other color films from 1980s and other film-related materials like paper, flyer, poster, and photos to be conserved. Annually, we can check the condition of our collection and date basic rewinding and preservation. We have organized a film digitization workshop, a basic film rewinding workshop with the international experts, and tape digitization workshops. And recently, we have conducted a paper restoration workshop for film, poster, and flyers in collaboration with Thai Film Archive. So we also organize a film-related material exhibition together with Restore Classic Films film screening, not only in Myanmar, but also in other countries. We organize Myanmar classic film screening in Thailand and Singapore, Japan, Scotland, Australia. So where we witness audience engagement to the Myanmar classic film. And looking back to the time when we first introduced Myanmar classic film screening and archival exhibition in Yangon in 2018, the audience interest was not much, but now we see that we could spread awareness about archiving and see a lot of Myanmar audience went to watch the restored films. So the survivor films are being stored in a state-owned film archive vault under the Ministry of Information. So the vault cannot support the necessary archiving facilities. But that vault was the one and only film archive vault in Myanmar, where they collected the one of the most of the important film from Myanmar. So the earliest film is from the 1934 silent film, which name was the Emerald Jungle. We could inscribe that film as the Memory of the War Regional Register in 2019 when we established our Save Myanmar Film project. So this means that vault kept most of the important films from Myanmar, even though Myanmar film industry started from 1920. Most of the black and white and silent film and sound and color film were lost. We could say like over 90% of the Myanmar film were already lost and destroyed. So in 1990, at the time there political crisis. So as my research, there are more than 100 black and white films will survive. So after 1919, during the political changes, right now we can only assess and see the condition of the 20 black and white feature films. So this means that we lost a lot of the black and white during the political changes after 1990. So that vault cannot support the necessary archiving facilities, even though it is under the Ministry of Information, it is the government bodies, and it is the government organization. But they still lack of infrastructure and proper cold storage system and technician who will regularly check the film's condition. So when we talk about the cold storage, there are things affecting the storage. For example, in Myanmar, we have frequent power cuts and the humidity control is not efficient, and archival building itself does not protect the films from environmental crisis. For example, during the cyclone Nagit in 2008, some of the film reels were affected by cyclone and already decay and destroy. So at the time, some of the important black and white film reels were affected, and right now the condition is not very good. They are started to be about to be decay and started the smell of the vinegar syndrome. So, however, we did not have a proper infrastructure and disaster management procedure to protect the film in emergency state. Our Save Myanmar Film always gives suggestions to do the necessary things for the archive, such as humidity control and changing the film cans and basic film rewinding things and cold storage system inside the building. But what they made is a minor changes, but apparently we still do not get any proper support for archiving from the nation. Obviously, successful archives around the world are mainly supported by the government. In Myanmar, also need this kind of support, but a lot of things have happened since 2021, so we are still struggling in this part. So after 2021, because of the COVID and also because of the coup, we couldn't walk our conservation and preservation things, so we could only restart Save Myanmar Film project after 2022. In terms of international collaboration, we have initiated 2 film digital restoration projects. The first project was the Daughter of Japan 1935, the oldest surviving talkies film from Myanmar. So that film was shot in Japan, one of the earliest film production from Myanmar. The name of the production is called A1 Film. At the time, they were trying to uh, the, to find the sound recording system, and they started filming with the sound in 1935 in Japan. So in this way, that film was survived in National Film Archive of Japan. But unfortunately, that film was totally lost in Myanmar. So with the help of the Japanese government, we could this film was gave back to Myanmar as a restored version for the 2020, the 100-year anniversary of Myanmar as a gift. So after this digital restoration project, we couldn't start other digitization things, but fortunately, Thai Film Archive helped us to do the digitization of the general cartoon, which is 1963 talkie satire film, for which we got support by the Thai Film Archive. For a non-profit organization, we stand alone without the nation's support. It is actually not very easy to get digital restoration done for a film. As you know, it is quite costly. So however, we are very grateful to both National Film Archive of Japan and Thai Film Archive for their support. So, well, we have some a lot of challenges since 2017. In fact, we have accelerated our works and have accomplished some of our mission and activities. However, our archive is far behind compared to other state support archives, even in our neighboring countries. We are faced with a crisis within our country. Sometimes, even though say Myanmar Film was selected to be funded, and a bad thing is that we couldn't accept the fund as international fund. Accepting was banned in Myanmar. So we can do some basic activities like tape digitization, non-film material conservation, and film screening by the support of the Asia Cultural Center from Korea, and British Council in Myanmar and Kote Institute Myanmar with a small grant program. But we can only run the basic conservation things because of the budget was very limited. For digital restoration and other activity, we are still looking for international support. And inflation is very bad these days, and people are struggling for many other things. And film archiving is paid less attention in public in Myanmar. So it's like we are still in the stage of spreading awareness to conserve films and film-related materials. However, we didn't give up doing archiving. At least we got acknowledged by our friends and international archival communities. So we are so grateful to them. And Save Myanmar Film is a small organization, so we are looking forward to work together with other experienced film archiving communities. If you want to know more about our work, you can visit our Facebook page and Save Myanmar Film website. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Okkar. So I want to introduce our last speaker, who is Sanchai Chotirosseranee, who is the Deputy Director of the Thai Film Archive, which is a public organization. He is on the Executive Committee of the International Federation of Film Archives and the Southeast Asia Pacific Audiovisual Archive Association. He's also a film programmer for the Thai Short Film and Video Festival and the Silent Film Festival in Thailand.
Hi everyone, good day. My name is Sanchai from the Thai Film Archive. Let me share my screen. I hope that you see all my screen, right? Is this work?
Not yet, Sanchai.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It's not working
First of all,
though.
I have to apologize if my signal is a bit bad. It's not working? Okay, let
Yeah,
me
it's not working.
check. Uh, is it working now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, first of all, I have to apologize if my signal is a bit bad. I don't know why. It takes a lot of time for me to log in today, and it's turned out that uh, my internet connection is unstable today, unfortunately. So I hope that I can talk through my presentation. I would like to express my gratitude to Elizabeth and Palita for inviting me to be here today alongside with my dear friends Bliss, Paul, and Okkar. It's just my honor to be here with you guys. And after hearing your presentation, I feel very, very honored to be part of it. Since today the topic is about labor, I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize the labor-intensive work of our archivists and how these challenges reflect on the effort behind film preservation. So I may not talk about the exhibition or programming, but try to focus on film preservation side only. Before going there, I would like to introduce you to the Thai Film Archive. The Thai Film Archive Public Organization was established in 1984 as the National Film Archive under the National Archive of Thailand within the Department of Fine Arts. So you can see that my black dog. This is the first working table that we had at that time. As a small governmental organization, the National Film Archive experienced very limited resources, both in terms of funding and manpower. Until 2009, the National Film Archive was transformed into the Thai Film Archive Public Organization. This transition allows us more administrative autonomy while still receiving government funding. Although this transition improved our situation, we still face challenges in managing our vast, our big collection and facility with allocated budget. I think you're gonna heard it again and again, and you may have heard it before from other film archive. We all suffer from the allocated budget. It never enough. I will tell you why. But first, have you ever wondered how long does it take for a film to become accessible to the public? So today, my presentation will tell you that. Let's start with acquisition. Some countries are fortunate to have the legal deposit laws which require filmmaker to send a copy of that film to the film archive, the National Film Archive. Unfortunately, most Asian countries don't have this regulation. Instead, we rely on network and trust to acquire film or the film-related material. At the Thai Film Archive, our collection includes newsreels, home movie, documentary, and short film, and of course, feature film. Getting this type of film requires strong relationship and public trust for donation. So this is one of the hard work for the film archive in Southeast Asia, I believe. It requires a lot of work as well. But most time consuming of film part of the film archiving is handling film itself, which includes inspecting, cleaning, and repairing each film. This process is done manually, frame by frame, and require attention to the detail. When we inspect film, we gather all relevant information, such as the type of print, its condition, release number, and even the title. it's not uncommon for print to get mixed up with the long film inside in the box in the case. This information is recorded for registration in our database. When we film come the cleaning, we remove dust, grease, mold, and in case of severe dust, we use specialized cleaning machine. As T-Pow already show you the moving, the recording of the very bad shape of the print. There's also a lot of mold that you can see that we need to clean that frame by frame. We repair the torn perforation and damage film using film tape. This ensure that the film can go through the scanner without falling apart. Handling is necessary whenever a film enter or exit our climate control storage. So that means, the film normally we keep in the climate control storage, the film vault. And when we before we get in, we check the film, we repair everything, and then when it get out, we need to check it again to make sure that the condition is still okay. For instance, if we plan to scan a print, it must be inspected twice. After scanning, we remove any tape repair before returning to the print to the film vault to prevent any chemical reaction caused by the tape. So that means you need to work it twice, and you put the tape on and then go to scanner, and then when you finish the scanning, you need to take the tape out and put it on the film vault. The time spent handling a film depends on its length and condition. Many print arrive at the archive in poor condition, like T-Pow presented, with sticky, shrunken, brittle element and torn perforation. Wijaya syndrome is one of the most serious threats to the film, like cancer combined with COVID. So it spread through the print and can even affect nearby print film. This syndrome is particularly common in tropical climate where heat accelerates the breakdown of acetate layer of the film. So this is really major threat in Asian country and in ASEAN countries. So the Wijaya syndrome. So you can notice that if you go through the film working room, you can smell some Wijaya smelling. That means Wijaya syndrome. Next is a digitization. This is where the film is converted into the digital file. Digital restoration is a lengthy process. Even we have a software or AI that can automatically remove dust, or scratch. But our archivists still have to perform quality control, reviewing film frame by film. So color grading is also crucial as we aim to restore film color and brightness to be as close to the original as possible. This process varies depending on the state of the film. For instance, fully restoring Santi Vina, when we restore Santi Vina, the print, we got a negative, very good condition. We took about 900 hours to restore the Santi Vina, digitally restore Santi Vina. Why the scar, which a much more damaged film negative, it took about 2,300 hours for the digital restoration. Of course, if we aren't fully restore the film, the workflow is simpler. We digitize the print and make basic adjustment to ensure that it's viewable. So to give you some perspective, as you may know, 24 frames per second, 1,440 frames per minute, 86,400 frames per hour, 172,800 frames for 2-hour feature film. And if you're dealing with a negative, the workload in film handling doubles. Since that you have to check the original camera negative and the sound negative. So in total, you have to handling 345,600 frames per 2-hour feature film. So, and of course, before a film can be made available to the public, it must go through the cataloging process, where as much information as possible is gathered. Of course, cataloging feature film is often easier. You have newspaper, a magazine that you can get all of information because you can track down this kind of existing information. But newsreels, on the other hand, are more challenging, especially when they are filmed on 50mm without sound. If we're lucky, we might find the script. If not, the cataloger have to search through all news paper to identify the footage. Or the documentary or the whole movie, you need to go to interview the owner and everything. So this kind of cataloging is one of the time-consuming process as well. So at Thai Film Archive now, our goal is to make 2,500 titles available to public each year. Feature film, newsreel, documentary, home movie. This number represents just 4% of our entire collection, which consists around 60,000 titles. And keep in mind, this number only covers analog film. It doesn't include magnetic tape, which we have a lot of magnetic tape, and non-film material like stills, poster, showcard, book, cloth, and museum objects. This require another hardship workflow. And of course, as Tipa presented earlier, the digital film that we need to handling them with another workflow as well. So that concludes my presentation. I hope that this presentation has given you a broader understanding and deeper appreciation of the immense archivist labor put into every film that to preserve and present to the public. And I'm not talking only for the Thai Film Archive case. I believe that every film archive around the world has experienced this immense labor work like we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It is so good to hear from people we work closely to, especially Liz and I. And thank you, everyone. I think I was struck by the idea of the emotional labor, right? That T-Pao mentioned. And this is the Q&A, right? I'm right about this. Okay, yes. So I like to maybe sort of address the attendees that we have the Q&A box. So please feel free to write down the Q&A and I'll Liz and I will moderate it. So maybe we'll start with the first question. I think Pim asked the question directly for the question is for Professor Bliss Lim. Do you mind if I read it out loud, Bliss? Okay.
No, I was looking at it and it's an
Yeah.
incredibly great question and a tough one. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to read it out loud. My question is for Professor Bliss Lim, and I was hoping to hear more about your current work with radical papers. Me too, in conversation with your concept of making do from your recent book. How has the reemergence of the Marcos family affected the ways that archival labor is practiced in the Philippines today? Does the current political movement in the Philippines pose unique challenges to archivists even beyond the legacy of past President Duterte? Salamat.
So thank you, Palita. Maraming salamat, Pim Gonzalez, for this question. It really is distilling everything that's at stake, and I'm going to try my best to answer it. There are some people I imagine, who are in the Philippines, who are joining the Zoom call. And so if they have anything they want to add or corrections they want to make to my impressions, I was last in the Philippines just this past August, but folks who live there might have a stronger sense of what's going on. My sense is that the Philippine Film Archive's pace of restorations and retrospectives has slowed markedly since Bongbong Marcos was elected to the presidency in 2021 and 2022. And I was actually a part of a stalled legislative effort in 2021, spearheaded by some folks in Congress and the Senate, and I and other archive activists and advocates were a part of this to try to create legislation for a Philippine audiovisual archive. And that really went nowhere. And one of the congressional leaders who was supporting us was not elected again in 2022. And, one of the things Sanchai mentioned is that you actually need, if you don't have statutory deposit laws to make people deposit copies into an archive, you need a lot of trust from the industry. And from that experience, I realized that the film industry doesn't exactly trust the whole idea of film archiving, and instead thinks that it's possibly piracy or revenue leakage. And this was like a huge stumbling block to the legislative advocacy that I was a part of. And I also think that the new, my book makes the argument that one of the reasons for the unsustainability of archiving in the Philippines is that it's tied to the Film Development Council of the Philippines, and that's a presidential appointee, currently headed by Jose Javier Reyes, who is a film director without, to my knowledge of archiving, although the head of the Philippine Film Archive remains the same from previous years, Don Arawan. And comparing the budget really quickly, when I saw your question, I saw that the budget in 2021 for the Film Development Council, which heads the archive, is 444 million. And last year it became 195 million for the FDCP. So it's a cut of over 50%. And that's to the whole Film Council. We don't even know what part of that budget goes to the archive. The second thing I want to say is that under Marcos, I think, and Duterte, there is a big investment in collective amnesia, and that the winnings of Duterte and Bongbong in the last two elections signaled the authoritarianism's growing appeal for Filipino voters, and that's actually based on not remembering martial law or misremembering the dictatorship. And so the thing that you saw was a part of, some of what you heard me talk about is, I'm going to share my screen, is part of a talk that I gave from new work that I'm doing on this film Respeto. And I'm it's a film about rappers made in 2017 by Treb Montreras. And what I'm kind of trying to talk about is that, in a moment where official archives are under-resourced, and you have a president in power who is really defunding historical memory agencies, and obviously understands that the power of the Marcos dynasty is linked to people not remembering their own history, then what happens is that informal avenues of remembering become really, really important. And I would say that in relation to Bongbong Marcos achieving power on the heels of Duterte and extending things like red tagging and red baiting, you have forms of radicalized remembering coming into being. Deferred remembering, radicalized remembering, memory activism, not from the government, but from, like things like the independent film Respeto that I was talking about. So I'll stop there. But I would say, it's an evolving situation, and people in the Philippines will know more than I would. Thank you.
And just to promote the event today in the Twin Cities, we're screening Lino Broca's Manila in the Claw of Light at Trilon today. But yeah, Thank you so much, Liz, for the question. And I think there's a sense of political precarity in Southeast Asia. I think that topic resonates so much when Okkar presented the work as well, that there's a lot of rupture in terms of political regimes and the transfer of power, and how even though it's an institution, it's a sort of almost official archival institution, that means politics plays a huge role, right, in the way budgeting works, and in the way human resources and the sort of ideology and motif of the institutions sort of plays out. And the next question, I think this is for everyone. Given the limited resources of the archives, how do you determine which records, films to prioritize? And thank you for the question to Ronnie. If I may add as well, I think there's a sense of the aspect of moving images in general too, right? And I think, for example, the Thai Film Archive did a lot of like reaching out to other institutions in Thailand. So maybe what type of do we consider the sort of I saw some, like advertisement as well, for example, the things that the Thai Film Archive collected. So how would you distinguish, and just to open up those sort of questions further? Whoever wants to start. Thank you.
Okay, I can start. Yeah, normally the film archive will have the collection policy, which the collection policy will be like the guideline that what film that we will preserve, what not. Let's say that now some people may donate the CCTV footage for us. And we said, no, of course not. We don't need that. But for Thai Film Archive case, we prioritize the film about Thailand or Thai film, because we only the film archive that handling with the Thai film. We got a lot of videotape or print like a Hollywood film, which is we think is not a priority for us to do that because they have bigger archive. We also have some Asian film because the Thailand used to be like the film lab, the post-production film lab for the many Asian production. So we try to contact the say T-Pound, the Asian Film Archive, that you want the film back, because I think okay, this is our ideology. We would like to encourage every country have their own film archive and handling their own film. But of course, nowadays, not every country have the film archive. So that we need to consider that, okay, we're going to keep it for you, but of course, it's not a priority for us because of the workload and everything. We not like go to them and scanning them or something like that. No. But yeah, for the but for special occasion, like Okkar mentioned, that we do collaborate some project together, that what we can do as well to help some less resources archive to do some collaboration project together. And I hope that it can encourage the government or anything to see the importance of the film archive as we did, because at the beginning when the Thai Film Archive was founded, we got a lot of support from international. We got the film from Swedish Film Institute, so that kind of thing that we think that many countries which our film archive, they need that kind of support and collaboration. So that's why we handle it with that.
Yeah, maybe I can add on, about how do we, decide and prioritize the sort of films to collect. So, I mean, I've mentioned earlier that we do have a guideline. It's a very broad sort of policy in which we consider factors of what's the physical condition of the film, is it something that's historically culturally or aesthetically significant, or it can be considered a part of an Asian national cinema. And of course, we have to also consider things like the copyright. Is the copyright of the film known? Things like that. And then, or can the film be made available for, public reference later on? But I think another thing that I want to emphasize is also we also try not to duplicate the efforts, like what Sanchai has also described. So the AFA also, our focus has always been on films that are not already been archived in any other institutions. So I think that sort of made the collection quite interesting as well, at the same time in a way. But we've also, as I think Sanchai raised earlier, it's actually not easy. In fact, I find myself like needing more films to be submitted, because there's no legal deposit. So I find that I rarely actually turn away films, like filmmakers who deposit their works. I rarely turn away. Only in instances where it's like maybe a television program, or like say a home movie, which of course doesn't fall under the AFA's sort of collecting ambit. But I think the irony is that I think the advocacy is so important, because I think filmmakers, especially filmmakers that are making born digital works today, they've become sort of complacent that digital is, I can keep it myself. But we've also faced the same problem of filmmakers who still kept films that are sort of languishing in their cupboards or in their homes, that the concept of it really takes an archive or the archivist sometimes years just to reach out, or to convince and to build trust, I think, to get the filmmaker to actually, learn, I think, why it is important. And I mean, we also practice sort of the same policy, where if we do come across materials or titles, say, within Singapore itself, that wouldn't fit, under our purview, we would actually refer it to our fellow archives that's in the region. And an example is, many years ago, a very, I guess, sort of infamous cinema in Singapore. It's called the Yangtze Theatre. They are infamous for showing sort of soft core films from Japan, from Korea, as well as and Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong films. And we found, before the cinema actually closed down, a lot of the release prints were actually left behind. And among them, of course, were this lot of Korean films. And of course, we've had a very good relationship with the Korean Film Archive. And so we got in touch with them, and we found out that actually the release prints that were left in this little theater in Singapore was really useful for them, because it was essentially what was missing from their collection. They had maybe prints that were like not in great condition. So it turns out that the prints that were left behind in the cinema turns out to be in better condition than the copies that they have in the Korean Film Archive. And these release prints came with subtitles. Like English subtitles. So it was a really sort of a great sort of, I guess, in a way, an exchange, sort of this sharing of resources and I guess collection of information that I think would really sort of build this relationship and create a synergy between different archives around the region.
I'm not sure if Okkar wanted to respond to the question on priority. Because if not, I want to ask a question also, but please.
Yeah.
I have a question too, but only if we have time. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think I dissolved the question too prematurely, I think. So given like, Okkar, do you need me to reframe the question?
To
Bliss,
me,
Yeah. Do you want to add anything or to the sort of priority to the like
Yeah.
what sort of priority to the Save Myanmar Art Film?
Yeah. To me, in Myanmar, the situation is different from the other countries and other archives. So, what uh, um, because the situation is really tough, and now we are facing the crisis in Myanmar. So what we are trying to do is not to lost our collection, because we have experienced that in last year we one of not one, just 4 or 5 title of the wreaths were lost, because these wreaths are in our list. And when after COVID and after 3 years, we went to the vault and we checked the films, but that 5 title were not in that place. So we asked to the government staff, and why these films were lost and where they are. So they already don't know. This means that it is like a illegal lost or stolen or something like that. So we really afraid of, and we have no answer for the donor of the production. So, but after 2 or 3 days, that the government staff, they told me that that title will be found again on the other place. So this means that our priority is not to lost the collection fast. So, and then we try to prioritize the film, like the one of the oldest black and white to be digitized. And then another priority is the newsreel, like the national ceremony or the religious ceremony, because somehow these images and recorded are the important for the Myanmar community and Myanmar people. So that is what we prioritize. But to sum up, what we are facing right now is not to lose the collections, because everything's gonna be happen. So we really taking care of the films. We normally check 2 or 3 times a week, and we have to go to the vault, and all the collection were there, or what is the condition of the is. Yeah, that is what we are doing right now.
we just have a couple minutes left. Please, do you want to ask your questions?
Mine was to T-Pao. You said, large-scale digitization of magnetic media may not be sustainable when you were talking about obsolescence. And we know, I mean, I don't know how many people know this in the Zoom call, but digital is not a tested preservation medium, right? And it's actually harder to preserve digital than analog. So films can last over 100 years in the right conditions. So when you said that, T-Pao, are you saying that the Asian Film Archive is moving towards not digitizing some things because digital archiving is... Oh, did he disappear? Or did I just lose him on my screen?
I think we lost him.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So I asked the question that made my co-panelists
no,
disappear.
he comes
See,
back.
I was like, oh my God, I asked you a question that made you disappear. So I just wanted
I
to
don't know
ask
why.
you. Yeah, I
Yes,
just
I heard
wanted
your
to ask you
question.
to talk about that. Yeah,
I
thank
was about to
you.
answer and then it just suddenly cuts off. I don't know why. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, no, I think no, I think there's no way we can do without digitization, because it's the only way you'll be able to access any work today. You know, what I mean, the general consensus, internationally across all archives, all the audiovisual archives in the world, is that it will be very difficult to find, and I think we're facing the same situation as well, that it's increasingly difficult to find machines to maintain the machines that will play back, for example, the magnetic media. At one point we had to outsource, really the obsolete format to like a little town in Italy just to be able to get a tape digitized, which is, I think it was like a D1 or something like that, like a Sony D1 tape, which was of course a technology that was like maybe at least 40 years old. Yeah, I mean, the thing about, I think the thing to highlight is that digital also doesn't equate to preservation, because with digital, you need to invest in the infrastructure to be able to store the materials, and of course, like I mentioned, the linear tape open format. Well, it's relatively a stable format. It's known. It's reportedly, it's supposed to last 20 years. 20 years, but manufacturers put out a new generation of the LTOs every 4 to 5 years, and every generation of the LTO player could only play back 2 generations back. So anything before, you will not be able to read it unless you continue to maintain all the hardware. So yeah, I think there's no choice, but we would have to digitize as much material as much as possible. I think in order to, well, first and foremost, in order to create access in the first place, but we have to continue the work nonetheless. But at the same time, we also, I mean, our policy is to retain the analog, the source material as well, and continue to preserve the digitized content. So that's like one side, and then of course there's also, at the other end, is collecting on digital, right? And the issue with that is that filmmakers are not making things, everything is a digital file, so for like, say, a feature length film, we could be looking at hundreds of files, down to like, say, a poster image, to like a production still, whereas in the past it was sort of a more a straightforward process where they keep hard copies of the annotated scripts, or the production supervisor's script and things like that. But now you have versions of everything in digital, as a digital format, and sometimes the filmmaker don't even remember what was it that they revised. Say like a copy of the script, they can have like 10 versions, and they have, or 10 versions of the same film of different lengths. So it really pushes us, that I think it's really a sort of different selection criteria, I think, when it comes to selecting born digital material for preservation. Yeah.
Thank you, T. Paul. And I think I
Thank
hear you. Yeah, and me and Bliss definitely working with the sort of film history. We have that issue for sure, right? Like 10 versions of the digital files, and you don't really know what you should use. And we're running out of time, but we have 2 questions that I'd really like to acknowledge and maybe like say it out loud, because I think there's a sense of advocacy that we try to do and to build here. So a question from Supawit, how do you increase the younger generation's engagement with the archive? And then another question by Charlotte to Professor Lim's, the account of the ingenuity and DIY element of archiving in the Philippines reminded me of the recent playful Burmese remake of Love and Liquor, and this is probably to Okkar, 1920, the original of which has been lost. Are there other possible examples of the unique archival context in Southeast Asia feeding back into filmmaking? And this, I think, this question is definitely really, it goes well with what Elizabeth has to say next about our next session.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I was really struck by Bliss' use of Sisyphean hope and how archival labor is like a continuous labor in endurance versus time and change. And our speakers have taught us so much about the political, economic, material, climate change that could be predictable or unpredictable that they have to work with in so many ways. And I wanted to thank Abba, who has been behind the scenes in making all this possible. And I wanted to note, though the last two questions that were asked could not be answered today, we could raise them at our next Theory, Praxis, Politics event focusing on non-institutional archival labor, where we have Yo Minghui, Wong Han Min, Lisa Bona Raman, who will be joining us on November 14th at 8 a.m. US Central Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Bangkok Time, 9 p.m. Singapore Time, and 2 p.m. in Berlin. So I hope then that we could continue the conversations. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to pass it over to Palita for closing remarks.
Yeah, and finally, I just like to really pass along my sincere gratitude to all of you here and to all of our attendees as well. I know it's late in Asia. We're trying our best to make it a webinar digital so that we can join from anywhere. Hopefully it works. And thank you everybody again. And for those of you who are now in Minnesota in the Twin Cities area, please join me in the archive on screen at the Trilon Cinema for the sort of collaboration. We're bringing Lino Brocka's Manila in the Claws of Light, one of the Filipino cinema masterpieces that was newly restored. Door opens at 7 p.m. and trilon.org for the ticket. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you again next session with the non-institutional archival labor.